Hi there.
Hi Arthur.
Hi, kan ik Nederlands praten? Of,
Nu wel, maar straks niet.
Nee, dat begrijp ik. Dat
Oké.
is mij helder. Ik probeer helder te krijgen hoe het nou precies gaat.
Oké,
ik vind het vrij rommelig en onduidelijk allemaal.
Oké.
Maar misschien kun je me helpen. Dus ik ben nu backstage.
Ja, maar je bent nu ook...
There.
Hi Arthur.
Hi. Hi, kan ik Nederlands praten? Of,
Nu wel, maar straks niet. Oké, er zit een delay in de uitzending. Zijn we live dan?
Je bent live. You're live.
Oké.
Arthur, can you turn off your camera? Then we can start and then I'll explain to you a bit on the back end. I'll send you a text.
Oké.
Nu wel. Oké, er zit een delay in de uitzending. Zijn we live dan?
Je bent live. You're live.
Oké.
Arthur, can you turn off your camera? Then we can start and then I'll explain to you a bit on the back end.
Arthur, zou je rechtsboven op leave kunnen klikken? Dan zal Don je verder helpen met de volgende instructies. Oké. Nu wel. Er zit een delay in de uitzending. Zijn we live?
You're live.
Welcome everybody to the Holland FinTech Meetup of September. I hope you all had a great holiday period. I hope you're all super excited to get back to work because despite you maybe being on holiday, a lot has happened in FinTech, so you got to stay up to date because we're moving really fast. But great to have you here today, and I think we can go to the next slide to briefly walk through the agenda of today. So we have 4 pitches, 4 really nice pitches lined up for you. As most of you are used to, we will give you the option to rate the pitches. By logging into Mentimeter, you can rate the pitches and give us a little feedback in the meantime as well. One thing is good to mention is, I know some of you are looking forward to the pub quiz of this month, like you do every month, and maybe you have even read through all our newsletters and practiced really well. I've got a little bit of bad news for today. We are just getting used to this new platform for these digital meetings, which we will also be using for the Amsterdam FinTech Week. And it has, we found out yesterday, it has a little bit of a delay in it, so it would be a little bit frustrating to do the pub quiz. We didn't have time to figure it out, but I do want to make sure that you know that next time the pub quiz will be back again. So please keep reading the newsletters and keep staying up to date. If we go to the next slide, I would want to briefly talk to you about Amsterdam FinTech Week, which is happening it's starting in exactly 1 week from today. I assume most of you are already quite familiar with Amsterdam FinTech Week and what's going on, but just to remind you, Amsterdam FinTech Week, it will bring together the FinTech ecosystem with 6 days of physical and online events, and we're going to celebrate the most innovative players and the companies in the industry. So usually, of course, you had Money 2020. They couldn't pull through last minute, so we are kind of covering up next to the normal activities of Amsterdam FinTech Week, also with more content-driven activities. So during the week, everyone who signs up to attend events will have access to our online networking area to set up one-on-one meetings with other people or communicating via the chat box or video call. And actually today, you already have the opportunity to do that. As you can see, if you're using your laptop on the left side, you can see the stage area, the networking area, the expo area. These are all areas where you can take a look at what's happening, connect with other people attending, and connect with Amsterdam FinTech Week through the expo as well. Good thing to note though, if you click on it, you will leave the stage, so you will leave the meeting and the broadcast. So if you want to do some networking, we have facilitated a time slot after the meetup for you to network with people you're interested in or connect with people you would like to. So please don't do it yet because you're going to miss the broadcast. Now back to Amsterdam FinTech Week. So naturally, we open this week up for all our member companies to get exposure by participating in events or submitting their own events. If you're interested in that, please send an email to events@hollandfintech.com. And besides that, also for all the member companies, we will showcase the most innovative fintechs in our ecosystem by streaming pre-recorded video clips throughout the week. So if you want your video clip to be featured during Amsterdam FinTech Week, please make sure to send it to events@hollandfintech.com as well. Without further ado, I think it's time for the first part of the agenda. If you can go to the next slide, please. And the next part of the agenda is going to be a market update on what's been happening in fintech in the last few weeks by our very own Don Ginsel. So Don, whenever you're ready, please switch on your camera and inform us.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for the introduction, and very much looking forward to this new structure that we're using. It's always a bit tough to get used to the new infrastructure, but I believe that this is actually going to offer quite a lot of more features to our audience to enjoy. So yeah, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we've seen happening in the market over the past time, and hopefully you'll find it useful because it saves you a lot of time of reading through reports. And but of course, it shouldn't stop you from reading all the newsletters, because making sure you know the highlights for the next pub quiz is definitely essential, of course. So first of all, I think it was wonderful to see that investments actually kept up pretty well in Q2. Already in August, we shared some preliminary figures about venture capital investments, but I'll share that a little bit more later on. Quite strong news for the Dutch ecosystem was that payment company Molly became a unicorn. They raised 25 million euros last year and added 90 million this year, but actually did that on a 1 billion euro valuation, which is quite extraordinary for amounts below 100 million to actually achieve that. So that's a pretty good job that they did. And I think it's also well deserved, because they've already been seen as a very innovative payment solutions company for already quite some time. And this, I think, is really good news for them to be able to expand their product out into the market, as well as the fact that they are actually putting Amsterdam and the Dutch ecosystem much further on the map. As earlier, Adyen, of course, made a big move. They're technically not a unicorn anymore, as they became listed, and unicorn status is only applicable to non-listed companies, private companies. But this is definitely, I think, a really interesting one, and it again gives the example that the Dutch payments ecosystem is actually quite mature and has a very strong innovative power to it. That's at least on a global scale relevant. What I think is interesting to see as well is that even though COVID, of course, put all of us in a sort of a lockdown, the plans for expansion across Europe or even globally are definitely not off the map. So on one hand, all the funding rounds that we saw usually were founded on expansion across countries to a large extent, similarly like for Molly, but also other news, like, for example, that Open acquired Da Vinci Group. I talked about that this morning in Flash Friday. Actually, these kind of transactions all allow these companies to go across border, and also they will be looking at, for example, Germany, Austria, and Eastern Europe for further expansion. So that's also interesting to see that basically companies are not being stopped at the moment to expand, and maybe even the fact that it becomes more normal to do business digitally actually accelerates international growth. Another part that was, I think, quite well mentioned over the past month, heavily discussed, is the effectiveness of anti-money laundering regulations. We see now that, for example, this week the EBA published a paper with their opinion about the need for further harmonization across Europe for the approach of anti-money laundering, especially since apparently all countries take their own regime, let's say, take their own explanation of what the rules should look like. which creates a really complex regulatory environment for financial institutions, as well as that there is actually a lot of redundancy and a very strong load of administration, which can really be challenged for effectiveness. So it's really good, I think, that we have an open discussion for that, but I think it will probably take a while before we will actually see a reduction or a simplification of the AML regulations. And for now, it really remains in focus for Europe to try and combat anti-money laundering. Quite a tough game for regulated financial companies to play, even though, of course, they do have a responsibility to rule out money laundering. Well, it has been speculated also for a very long time already that banks should merge across Europe, creating more cross-national or international champions to compete, for example, with Asian big banks and American big banks, because currently in Europe, most of the larger banks still have a relatively strong national focus or regional focus, and therefore don't have the scale to really compete at that level internationally. And we saw some beginnings. Of course, we saw a merger already from UniCredit before, but this week we saw that, or last week we saw that Bankia and Caixa in Spain are going to merge. This is not still a cross-border merger, but still these are pretty large banks that are coming together. This is especially being applauded by organizations like also the ECB and other parties that really believe that cross-bank mergers should create stronger European champions. And so it's quite likely that we will see more of these developments in the coming months, where other banks are also going to explore further collaboration or acquisitions. For the rest, of course, probably if you follow the stock market, you've seen that the stock prices have risen much further, even beyond August, even though since last week they finally took a turn downwards for a strong correction, especially given the tech funds, who were the ones that were actually also growing very, very fast, way beyond pre-COVID levels. So there was a long anticipation already on the correction. The interesting thing is, I think that with the relatively good stock markets, also the plans for IPOs have really become much better, and especially driven also by the rise of the concept of a SPAC. That's a special purpose acquisition company, which basically lists in advance of acquiring a company to become listed. So, for example, we know in the Dutch market, this example has been used by CM.com, a messaging and payments operator based in the south of the Netherlands, who's quite a big payments operator and innovator as well. They also chose not to list themselves directly in an IPO, but actually to be bought by a listed vehicle, because people see that it actually reduces a lot of time and paperwork in the process. There's a lot more flexibility to it, so it's becoming quite popular, especially in the US. Slowly also in the UK, and so also I think mainland Europe, we're going to see much more of these kind of listing procedures. Yeah, for the rest, we just keep an eye out for the developments with COVID. So I think that's something that you probably all are fully aware of, so I won't go in too deep. So I've got some graphs that I picked from some reports. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll take you through that. So I found it interesting to see how the payment behavior is changing, especially on the left-hand side. This is a report from that you can find in the FinTech Times, how COVID-19 has impacted the future of finance. You see how the payment methods differ, the payment ways differ per country or per region on the left-hand side, which I think is an interesting one in general for you to have access to. But I was mostly shocked by the image on the right-hand side. Of course, we imagined already that the use of cash was very strongly reduced due to COVID, but here you could actually see very well the blue line representing the 2019 figures, and the yellow line representing the 2020 figures that took a really big dip when the corona measures kicked in. By the way, if you want to better read the slides, probably if you double-click it, it becomes full screen instead of just a smaller box. You don't have to look at me all the time. That's also an advantage. Can I get the next slide? Yes, so here you see that we have some Here you see the figures that came from the Pulse of FinTech, which is a report that KPMG makes over the years. They bring out one every quarter, make it really easy to track the developments of FinTech investments across the world. And what you can see here is that actually, if you look at the top right graph, you'll see the venture capital investments. That actually, if you compare that to that 2020 is half a year compared to 2019, which is a full year, that it's actually not that bad. So venture capital up with the trend that we saw in 2020, not so much less, even given COVID. The only thing that we saw is that the number of deals initially was a bit slower with smaller companies. But actually now also, if you look at the number of deals, it's pretty similar to what we saw in 2020. So where's the biggest difference? It's actually in M&A activity and IPOs. And of course, you see that the big mergers were initially in the first half of the year were really slow. It was really hard to get these mergers going. And we saw also that a lot of deals actually were being disputed because acquiring companies wanted to reduce the price of the companies that they were supposed to buy. And I think there's still quite some of these acquisitions in procedure. So I think that's quite explainable why there were less deals. At the same time, as you see, also compared to what I was saying about banks going into mergers, we also see fintech collaborations or M&A activity, like this week, Open and DaVinci. So my expectation is actually that we will see in Q3, I'm not so sure, but especially Q4, I think we'll see a very high, much higher activity number. Also, when at some point, actually, we will see the insolvencies coming to the rise. Because the funny thing is, also, if you look at the data of insolvencies, that over the past 2 quarters, or at least since the outbreak of COVID-19, there has been record lows with regard to insolvencies, especially in the Dutch market. And I think also in the countries around us, which say a lot about the fact that the measures by the government help, but they might actually overextend the help to even companies that should go bankrupt. So it's really at some point now, as also the politicians are debating how to reduce the support for the economy, at some point you will see, of course, a very strong rise in the number of bankruptcies, because it is still imminent that it will land, and that's probably also again another trigger for M&A activity. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a nice overview. I'm not sure if you can see it properly. Also from the same report that shows you the biggest 10 deals worldwide. I think we've written about all of these over the past week, so over the past months. So you'll probably, if you read our newsletters, you will recognize all of them. Of course, we'll see the Asian champions Grab and Gojek, which are really nice to see. That let's say it's interesting to see that they remain in the lead, even though we're at this point last year, for example, most of these highly rated companies would be mostly Chinese, but we see actually very strong reduction of funding in the Chinese ecosystem. But here you see Gojek from Indonesia and Grab from Singapore actually still on the rise, and I think it underlines that Asia is not to be underestimated with regard to fintech developments. Yeah, I think the rest of the names are quite familiar, especially the neobanks, of course, with the Chime, N26, and Revolut. We've seen a lot already coming forward. Next slide, please. Yes, this is a small overview of the biggest trends. I'll just mention them briefly, and I'll definitely encourage you to read the report because I think it makes a lot of sense what they've written about this. So this is also what we talked about in previous sessions, and digital trends just accelerate as people's alternatives get cut off. So if you can't pay with physical money anymore, you will go to digital alternatives, just like any process that requires people getting together, handovers of papers, wet signatures, stamps, any kind of old-fashioned processing is completely impossible these days. And so everything is being replaced by digital solutions, really accelerating everyone who offers solutions in that space, which is still about 80% of the fintech space. The platform business is still on the rise. It's a bit of a buzzword because it's a bit like with leadership courses, right? So everyone wants to be the leader, but if everyone's a leader, who then is actually the follower? The same as with the platform business. Not everyone can be the platform. It's good to think about, of course, how you can be an intermediary that plays an important role in the value chain. But it doesn't always mean that everyone will first come to you to solve a problem. And it's especially hard for financial services companies that actually make a product. Think about if you run a balance sheet, a payment machine, or an investment vehicle, it might actually be pretty hard to be the platform because you actually run a product factory. Well, fintech moving into adjacencies, I think it's interesting the fact that a lot of organizations, like for example payment institutes, they are supporting e-commerce companies traditionally with payments. But nowadays, actually, getting the payments done is not the hassle. It's more about how do you drive conversion, how do you help prevent fraud, how do you make shopping online easier rather than just doing the transactions. And so you see now that actually the competition is much more, not so much in making cheaper transactions or faster transactions, but it's rather enabling more transactions so that both the merchant as well as the PSP, for example, actually drive more revenue. Well, the rest I'll keep a bit short. Strategic deal activity from corporates that keeps on the rise has a lot to do with the fact that digitization needs to move forward, and a lot of corporations lack that capacity. Consolidation I mentioned already, and I think fintech regulations as well. So let's go to the next slide. So these 2 points I really wanted to make. I'm not sure if it's really well readable. For me, it's actually quite hard, or maybe I just need glasses. Two elements, I think, as overall, you saw that there was, of course, a slight decrease in, there was, let's say, so the trend was pretty similar for venture capital activities, but except for private equity and M&A. But we saw two exceptions there, and that's on the left-hand side, you see the image for RegTech, which saw quite a big boom. And so this is not just venture capital, but also includes M&A, and therefore it's much stronger. And on the right-hand side, it's cybersecurity investments. So we see there that actually the number of deals is not particularly high, but especially large sums of money went into cybersecurity, as we can see here on the right. Next slide, please. And of course, this also makes a lot of sense. We see that, especially since everyone's working remotely and all our more social checks and balances are gone, it becomes much harder actually to prevent cybersecurity hacks. So it's really well understandable that we see a big rise in cybersecurity. This one I'll keep very short. This is the same image as we saw before, with on the left-hand side M&A activity, and on the right-hand side top you'll see venture capital. This is the European image, so still actually similar image as worldwide, even though even less M&A and IPO activity than we saw in, for example, adding up Asia and Americas to this as well. Next slide. And here we see sort of the venture capital activities, and you see here that actually Europe is doing pretty well in keeping up the deals over the past 2 quarters. And so it's interesting to see that where before America and Asia have always been very much in the lead, Europe is still a bit behind with regard to the volumes of money that are going around, but we're still catching up. And I think it's quite nice to see that the liquidity is really coming to the market, enabling fintech companies as well to grow further. Next slide. And that brings us to these champions. This is also from the same report, the list of the top 10 deals. And it's actually nice to see that also some of our members, of course, are ending up here. It's really cool to see that actually so many companies are doing well and raising at this time, where maybe just when COVID was hitting, there was a lot of worry in the market whether this would be feasible. Then there's one last slide, and then I'll wrap it up. And that's the overview of the top 250 fintech companies according to CB Insights. I just want to recommend that's an interesting report to read because it gives a lot of insight into various areas of fintech that are happening. Also, of course, here you'll find a couple of our members in the list. We haven't saved all 250 together just yet, but I would definitely like to extend the invitation to work with us at this moment. And definitely check out this CB Insights report. It should be in, I think, last week or this week's newsletter. And I wish you much luck with the rest of the meetup. Enjoy. I hope you found it insightful. And please ping me directly after the meetup through the messaging app if you have any questions or would like to know more. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Don. Thank you for sharing your detailed insights into what has been happening lately. Always great to stay up to date by someone with as much expertise as you have. So on to the next part of today's, and that is going to be the pitches. So before we get started with the pitches, I would all ask you to go to menti.com. Once you're there, you fill in code 2923892. I will just share that code in the chat. So 2923892. There you go. If you want to see the code in the chat, you can. There's a feature called chat. I posted it in the event option of the chat. So please log into Menti, because this will enable you to rate the pitches of today. And also, I would like to really highlight that we would be very happy if you have feedback on the pitches. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat area, and I will make sure to pick them up and address them during the Q&A after the pitch. So do not hesitate to ask these questions. There's a small delay of about 10 seconds in the broadcasting. So please, as soon as you have a question, put it in the chat box. And then it's time to go to the first pitch of the day. So next slide, please. And the first pitch of the day is by Ace Company. It's a high-end consulting firm dedicated to strategize, direct, facilitate, and execute regulatory-driven change in the financial sector. Today, joining us, we have Nick Prince, who's a managing director, and Arthur Willigenburg, who's managing partner and founder. So without further ado, Nick and Arthur, please go ahead and show us what you got. I believe Arthur is still on mute. We cannot hear you right now.
Yes, let me just talk to him.
On mute.
There we go.
I think this would be better. Thank you for the opportunity for having us today. My colleague Nick and myself will talk a little bit about Ace Company. Our tagline is your first port of call for regulatory change and regulatory intelligence. I myself talk a little bit about our management consulting capabilities, and Nick is specifically here to talk about our solutions for regulatory intelligence and RegTech. So we currently have 3 pillars in our company. I mentioned already our management consulting capability. That's called Ace Management Consulting. We also have an interim management firm. It's called Atomic Interim Professionals. And finally, Ace Take Act RegTech Solutions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. The next slide, Nick. So having the opportunity, can you go to the next slide, Nick? Yes, thank you. Having the opportunity to talk to this network, I think we missed out on one, Nick.
Yeah, I think there's a delay. Sorry, Arthur.
Okay. So having the opportunity to present here is very good for us. I think we are looking, obviously, for new clients to work with, to collaborate with, to further expand our solutions. We're also looking for opportunities to collaborate across the network. And we'll talk about a little bit later on in this presentation. And sharing our knowledge and expertise in the area of RegTech and risk, finance, and compliance consult is another specific aim of ours during this presentation. We only have 5 minutes, so Nick, I would kindly pass it on to you to dive a little bit deeper into the content. Please go ahead.
Hey, thanks a lot, Arthur. So first of all, a big hello to everyone. It's fantastic to be here. We're really happy and excited to be part of the network, and really enjoyed the first speech there by Don. Very exciting. So as Arthur said, we don't have very long, and we've got so many different things that we'd love to talk to you about. But because we only have a few minutes, we're going to focus on only one item today, and that's regulatory insight as a service. But in the presentation that you'll find attached at the end of the session, you'll be able to look at some of the other highlights. And if you want to ask any questions about those, please feel free to get into touch. So what we're talking about today is the newest proposition that we're going to be launching at the end of 2020 and early 2021. And we call that RISE, and that stands for Regulatory Intelligence as a Service. And particularly for us in the RegTech space, we're dealing with an immense amount of additional data points being collected across the entire regulatory change management lifecycle. And as a quick background, one of the fundamental frameworks that we use to help our clients manage that, and typically it's a chief risk officer within a bank, one of the large banks or one of the small banks, it doesn't matter, is the change lifecycle. And it covers all of the steps that the bank needs to go through to take care of a regulation as it moves from the identification stage through to the impact assessment stage, all the way through to evidence and compliance. And of course, all of the planning and reporting which goes on around that. And one of the recurring themes in so many of our clients that we find out is that it can be an immense challenge to even know how an individual project is going. When you expand that, as most of the large regulatory themes require, into a program, and you take that across borders and you involve the scaled agile programs and the transformations taking place in the bank, the fact that you've got a mix of tactical and structural projects happening to all achieve a deadline, it can become extremely hard, if not impossible, for a CRO to actually know how they're going at any point in time and to proactively predict the risk. On top of that, many of our clients also needs to understand what the future investment is on a yearly basis at the moment. At the beginning of a regulatory initiative, normally there's a golden plan that says it will cost 23 million to achieve tactical compliance or structural compliance. But as we all know, in year 2 and year 3, that can evolve. And by the time you actually go live, you're in this kind of mixed hybrid world. And it can be very difficult to have the full investment portfolio available in an updated way, in a data-driven way. So our goal with RISE is to provide that intelligence, but kind of along the lines of what Dom was talking about, not as a platform, but as a service. So we understand that these data points, they exist across the entire company. And what we do in our company is we use all of our management consulting experience to identify the data points, collect them on behalf of the CRO, and provide them via some interactive dashboards, which not only provide atomic level information, but they create a story so that the insight is actually part of a joined information journey rather than an atomic question from a silo. For example, it's not good enough to know you have delays in the data sourcing program. You also want to know what those delays are going to affect in terms of your other regulations. So with RISE, you can actually do that in a very proactive way. You may find that one country's data is required for 4 different regulatory themes, and that immediately lets the CRO pull those people into the right meeting at the right time. And with the dashboards, you're able to drill into the change program as a whole to look at the aggregated level. You can look at individual themes such as definition of default or Basel or IFRS 9. Within the themes, you can even go into the individual initiatives. And if that's not good enough, you can also split your program and view it across the dimensions that we have in the regulatory life cycle to the left. So we really, I guess one of the ways to kind of sum this up is we're really not trying to answer the basic operational questions that you see in a lot of the visualization tools. We're trying to answer the questions which normally don't get asked, the ones which fall between the white spaces. And to be honest, we could talk about it for hours, but we thought a quick teaser would be nice for today. And we're really excited to launch this in 2020, early 2021. And we have a really long roadmap of future layers that we're also really excited to keep you updated on. Arthur, back to you.
Arthur, I believe you're still you're muted again. Please unmute and continue.
Yeah, that's a slight lag. There's 2 things we would like to highlight. Thank you very much, Nix, for your explanation. The first one is, please reach out to us if you want to introduce this solution within your organization or with your client. That's obviously very interesting to us. And the second one is we're expanding our solution as we move towards our launching date later this year. if you are active in this specific niche of regulatory change, risk, finance, and compliance, also please reach. So thank you very much for your attention. Hope to talk to you soon. And back to you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Arthur. Thank you very much, Nick. Really nice presentation. Please stay in the chat for a few more seconds because we would like to do a Q&A. I see Nick just left. So Nick, if it's possible for you to just come back for the Q&A, that would be really great. While we wait for that, I would like everyone who's attending today to go to menti.com and fill in your grade for this pitch. And in the meantime, I will get to the Q&A. There you are, Nick. Great. So I see the attendees are still a little bit slow with finding their way to the chat box or coming up with inspirational questions. But I do have a few questions for you guys. So maybe it's because I'm not an expert in the field that you are, but the first question that pops up is, you know, with all the banks, many of the large banks, the legacy systems, very complex systems, how does it work with integration? Does it offer challenges or?
It's a fantastic question. Do you mind if I take that one, Arthur?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that we find a lot in, I don't want to kind of point out any products here, but a lot of products kind of promise that they can provide this insight in a kind of turnkey manner. And as you're saying now, Michael, the banks are this incredibly complex mix of legacy, you know, anything from a mainframe through to an absolutely contemporary architecture. And the data points do not exist in a preformed way. And often the CRO is left waiting for this target model landscape or this future model landscape to be in place. And then suddenly all of the insight will be delivered. So we in our roadmap, we have integrations built in, but it's not our primary expectation that all of the data that we need exists in a very, very structured way. And that's where we use that's why we call it a service. So we take that pain away. If the data is there in a very structured way, fantastic. We will access it, we will pull it in an automated way. If it's not, we use our consultants to interview people to collect it in the right way. And we're so concerned with the quality of data at Capture that in fact, we think that's one of the advantages of the service, that we're not looking for a completely automated way all the time.
Okay, great, nice answer, thanks. And what does a real world look like? Is it easy to do that, or do you find a lot of troubles?
So I think if we hadn't lived through it for the last, I think, 10 years, I think we would have, we'd probably just be delivering basic information. But I think the advantage is that we've done these programs now for, like I said, the last 10 years. And the data points you need to collect, there aren't actually that many, but it's how you collect them and it's how you, I guess, quality assure the data coming into it and how you link them together in the right way. So actually, once you have the right expertise, populating the data, collecting it, and I guess doing very diligent interviews at the beginning, then it's very quick. It's very quick. I think as long as you have access to the information and you have good trust and sponsorship, it's fast. I would say the entire portfolio of dashboards, they could be populated within a few months, okay. And then you're in the maintenance cycle.
Okay, very sounds quite impressive. We have some questions coming in now, actually. So first question from Tjeerd van der Stroom. He's asking, what kind of parties are you seeking to cooperate with? Could you give some examples?
Yes, I can talk to that. So within the cycle, which was briefly mentioned by Nick, so our 7-step cycle, we're specifically looking for partnering on the topic of regulatory identification. So any parties that are gathering regulatory regulations on the internet, other sources. We're looking to do data assessments as well. So for specific regulation, especially reporting and modeling, data is required, and we're trying to track the data that's already in, to track the data that's needed. So there's many elements of this cycle from, let's say, regulation identification until compliance evidencing that we want to have further collaboration with parties that also work on these modules. Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of room for collaboration in different areas. Yes, yeah. Yes. Okay. As I said, we're looking to expand our solution and our services. Okay.
All right. Yeah, that's a pretty clear answer to me. One more question, last question before we move on. It came in from YouTube by Rudy van der Linden, and the question goes: how are these projects now managed?
Yeah, that's another good. I think both of us could talk about that for a while. So what we tend to find, if you look at the typical business intelligence projects, most of the banks know the information they want. They know where the information is, but they just don't have the time or the capacity to pull it together. And there's something else we found too, which is a little bit controversial, but it's the truth. The people who need the information don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to collect it. And the people who do have access to the data are not actually motivated to collect that data and collate it and aggregate it in the way that the CRO needs. So you're kind of left with this world where everyone's working as hard as they can, but the two roads never quite meet. And so we play that sort of orchestration role. So it's something that we have kept waiting for the banks to solve, but all they really get to in their projects is, I would say, an operational level of intelligence. And they really are trying, but they're battling with an awful lot of pressure at the moment. And
yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, makes sense. No, it's great that you can help them with that. You have that integrated in your service offering.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Arthur. Thanks, Nick. Very insightful.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Pleasure.
Thank you. And then I think it's time to move on to the next pitch. Let's see. First, we had another slide. If you go to menti.com, you can give us a little bit of feedback, which is really nice for us as well. Then next slide and next pitch. So the next pitch is going to be by Jurgen van der Broeke. He's managing director at EveryoneInvested. EveryoneInvested, they provide software solutions to business clients who offer financial investments to their customers. So Jurgen, I see you're ready. Great. I'm going to switch my camera off, and please feel free to take it away.
Okay, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So indeed, my name is Jurgen van den Broeke, Managing Director at EveryoneInvested. And as you can see on this opening slide, we offer omni-channel investment journeys for life, basically narrowing the digital distance between you and your clients. That's what we do. A bit short history of who we are and where we come from. Let me see if I can get this right. Yeah, so one slide just to position ourselves. Very simple. We are the former innovation team of KBC Asset Management, in itself part of KBC Group, active in Belgium, some Central European countries, and also Ireland. And that's what we are, a spin-off of this innovation team, meaning that we are what we call B4B, buy a bank for a bank. So the solutions that we bring, and I will give you a highlight in just a moment, basically is bringing to the market, outside of the boundaries of KBC, solutions that have proven commercial and business value in the context of digitizing the investment process. Before I give you a view on the solutions that we provide, let me take it from another angle and share with you an overview of the problems that our solutions help solving. Reading from left to right on this slide, one of the challenges that many of us face is what we call the fear of losses in many areas, basically. But if you look at investing, of course, investing itself for many people already feels like losing money, because physically you have to transfer money from your savings accounts to an investment, for example. And as soon as you are invested, financial markets start to move. And we all know that gains and losses mentally are not necessarily coped with and dealt with in the same manner. So that's one of the challenges that we need to overcome, definitely, if you are thinking about a pure digital process, because then it's really a challenge to remedy and to channel this fear. And we see that indeed it is also reflected in the fact that in many cases around Europe, we see cash is piling up despite the very low interest rates. The amounts held on current and savings accounts are really reporting all-time highs. Also a challenge which we help to tackle in a pure digitized context. Another one, the young don't invest. We really think it's well, first of all, in the benefit of clients themselves, people themselves, to start investing at a young age, but definitely also for financial institutions, we think it makes sense to start rejuvenating the investor base, because the classical model, for example, of providing advice, people visiting branches and so on. If you read public reports on that, the average ages tend to be 60 over or even higher, depending on some countries. So there again, digitization as a means to broaden your scope. Another challenge definitely, let's say, on every day's agenda is to improve the conversion of a digital investment process, because we are very much convinced that many cases show that digitization is just basically an automation of processes we know from in branches. So again, there we want to leverage on the means of the digitization to improve the value of the of this digital process and improve at the same time also the conversion. And then finally, but there could obviously also be a sixth challenge, but the fifth one on this slide is that a pitfall might be that if you talk about investments in a pure digital way, so no encouraging talk of a human advisor, then people might conclude, well, if I look at my investments at this bank or at the competition, it's all just a combination of equity, bonds, and cash. It's always more of the same. So our solutions there as well, in a pure digital context still, they show ways of visualizing, of phrasing, and basically of bringing the message and the information across in a way that it gets the answers to the questions people have, but also in a way that it brings comfort and prevents them from pushing the sell button in on their digital device in the comfort of their own living room. So that's an overview of the challenges our solutions help to tackle. And of course, they might be different when we talk to one potential client to the other. That's the way how we tend to prioritize then to see which solutions could serve their purpose best. But what these all have in common, these challenges, is that they, in one way or the other, confirm that investing is very much an emotional process. And this quote by a person who is very much an inspiration of ours is saying really what we try to do, saying that we want to manage the emotional component of investing in order to nail the greatest open challenge of financial technology. And what we have there, what we bring to the market, is really our key expertise in the key ingredient that helps to tackle this challenge, which is the applied behavioral finance, trying to enrich the digital process in order that the lack of a human encouragement is compensated and actually is no longer a hurdle. So in a schematic way, our solutions basically are visualized by this slide here. It shows that we are basically inspired to address three things, not only in the development of our solutions, but also in the assessment of their success afterwards. First one is conversion. As I said, we very much believe that digitization should be more than an automation of existing things. It should be more by, for example, our knowledge on behavioral finance to enrich it and to improve the conversion rate and your net sales of investments through digital channels. Again, on the rejuvenation part, we really think that digitization is not a goal in itself, but really a means to reach out to new clients, younger clients, and so forth. And then equally important, if indeed you do reach more people in a purely and converting digital way, then the highest block to overcome is to also make sure that retention is up to par, meaning that you address the fear of losing money in order to make sure that once invested, people remain invested. And while I'm talking, you will see, you have noticed, of course, that on the right of this slide, there's a little clip that goes over the solutions that we have, all active in subsidiaries of KBC, and the visualization hints on the fact that indeed they are omni-channel. Some of them fit on the screen of a smartphone because they're indeed integrations in the mobile banking app of our clients. Others had the shape of a desktop because in some cases we also build solutions that help advisors and support them in a more digital way, supporting the hybrid model that some of our clients want to go for. And to conclude, just a few, let's say, use cases, some metrics of realized projects. One of them is this one that we built to address younger clients and help them, help our B2B clients rejuvenate their client base. It's called the Rejuvenation Engine for obvious reasons, and it links investments to digital payments. So here we see the three metrics that we always have in mind: conversion, retention, and rejuvenation. In this particular case, over 55, actually now already 60,000 clients are user of this service. The average age is 38, which is well below the average age, let's say, of the conventional investor. And in this particular case, of the 55,000 users, almost half of them were first-time investors, of which 11% already engaged in additional investments, taking own initiative. It's equally an equal base to compare the metrics of another project, which was here a project that improves the risk profiling part of a digital advisory flow. And we all know that if you push the classical questionnaire on the screen of a smartphone, that it's a killer for conversion. So also there we have a solution that helps to overcome that, and it gets you more and better risk profiles, better because also the content is improved. And what you see here are the metrics of 1,400 users of this process, where we reported a 85% conversion rate, so obviously much higher than what we previously had using the questionnaire in that stage of the digital process. Again, the average age, we were able to reach out with this ultimately dull topic of profiling to a clearly younger audience. And in the beginning that we launched this process, we also had an NPS filing at the end, which reported a result of 80%, because people not only liked the outcome and could relate to the profile that our application appointed them, but they also liked the journey because we refresh it and we use it based on principles of gamification and things like that. So showing you that our solutions are operational in the context of an established financial institution, and we always have in mind to play conversion, rejuvenation, and retention, as I said, to narrow and shorten the digital distance between your clients and your investment. So I'm happy, of course, to take any questions you may have now or later addressing me with this by this email. I'm always available for more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jurgen. So the email is jurgen@everyoneInvested.com. And indeed, it's time for the Q&A. In the meantime, I would like to just remind everybody to go to menti.com and give the feedback for the presentation of Jurgen today. And then I think we can get started with the Q&A. One question has already come in. The question has been asked by Adib Ahmed, and he asks, can you maybe share one of your recent projects and how you guys contributed?
I think the most recent project is the one that I referred to in the last slide with this, let me go back with this here. So this is referring to what we call a profiling application in a digital context. So we launched this very recently, end of June, in KBC Ireland, where literally in every part of the process, so that means in the mobile banking app of the client, in the web applications, and also in the internal system for advisors, everywhere has the classic questionnaire been taken out for risk profiling purposes and replaced by this profile. So there we contribute clearly to the improvement of a digital process, because KBC Ireland, and that's a bit, of course, the strategic choice, but in Ireland, KBC is recently active only recently for the last 5 to 6 years, really going for a digital first strategy, meaning that they are very much also trying to reach out to a younger audience, so they have less legacy, less burden, let's say, of the advisory network that potentially would have to be scaled down, but they really start with much less legacy, going for digital first, and very much appreciating, of course, everything that can improve the conversion of that process. So there we contribute, helping them, again, without the support of an advisor, to get more people having their profile filled in, meaning that they're also receptive for prospection, direct marketing, and so on, really putting the fundamentals there for a future investment relationship.
All right, thanks, Jurgen, for that answer. I see there are no other questions, but I do have a question more about your opinion, because you touched upon before that one of the problems was that despite having really low interest rates, savings accounts are still at an all-time high.
Indeed.
Do you think that's because of the crisis that we're currently experiencing, or do you think there are other reasons for that?
I think there are other reasons for that, because it has been going up for the last decade or so. I mean, of course, for many people.
And I see that Jurgen has left us in the middle of his answer. That must be, I assume it's a connection issue. If you can get back, can join again, Jurgen, then I will, then you're welcome to do so. I'll just give you a few seconds to join back if you can. And otherwise, we'll just move on to the next pitch.
Okay, I'm back.
Ah, there you are. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I was giving you the answer that indeed for many people today's situation puts, I guess, quite some uncertainty on their future financial well-being, which might be the cause of the accumulating amounts on savings accounts. But what we also observe is that in many financial institutions, there are lots of banking clients that have been accumulating savings for the last years well beyond the current crisis. And so tick all the boxes of being a prospective client for investments, for one reason or the other, did not accept any offer in the past. So also there we have a very clear strategy and some solutions to tackle in a pure digital context. And that's where the behavioral finance comes into play, choice, architecture, and so on. The way you present the information to that kind of very different clientele, if you're able to put it in their perspective, then also their purely digital wealthy savers can be convinced to enter into a first-time investment, we are sure.
Okay. That sounds like a big opportunity there.
Indeed.
Thanks, Jurgen. I see there's one more question coming in through the chat, but we're running out of time here. So if you'd like, you can reply through the chat.
Okay, I will do so.
Right?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jurgen. Thank you very much. Okay, so I hope you all had the opportunity to give your feedback for the pitch. And then it's time to move on to pitch number 3 for today. Also, don't forget to fill in the feedback through menti.com, because we always follow up. We always ask you to give your rating and then ask you a little question for feedback for Holland FinTech, for ourselves. And then it's time for the next pitch, pitch number 3. The pitch is going to be about Fortech. It's a company that provides full stack custom software development services. And the person to present is going to be Ioan Margineu. I hope I say that correctly.
Yeah, really, Michael. Really.
All right, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I think we can get started. Andre, please feel at home and share your insights.
Yep, definitely. I'm sharing my screen as well. Hope it's coming through. Okay, hi everyone. Nice to meet you. Thanks, Michael, for the intro. I'm happy to present our company, Fortech. We're part of Holland FinTech since May this year. It's actually Michael who got us introduced and took us through the process. And we're happy to engage with the network here and staying up to date with all the financial industry news. Let's kick off with a smile then. It is funny, but true, the pandemic has been a catalyst for digital transformations in many organizations. 2020 has been a showcase of operational agility for most of these companies, and they had challenges in areas of operations, whether it be internal IT departments or HR or anything, moving all of this stuff online. If we're talking about remote teams, then they had to ensure the team's well-being, productivity, and engagement. And lastly, but not least, the area of digitalization, where they had to quickly update either their internal or I think worse off, their customer-facing processes, which were not up to date with what's coming, with moving everything online. And I wanna talk today about how Fortech is helping a financial services company by empowering them in digital innovation and transformation. As a tech partner, we build dedicated teams that truly integrate and provide full stack end-to-end custom software development services. Every client is unique, and that's why we tailor our approach for the specific context. For example, we supported one of our clients' accelerated innovation efforts through a partnership that allowed them to go to market really fast. I can share some insights about our collaboration. They're a successfully funded startup from the UK, operating in the payments and accounting information space. And we accelerated their delivery through an agile remote team, which is integrated within their own team. So we enable them to expand faster in their goals. I would like to focus on the why for this project. Why did it make sense for them to partner up with Fortech? Where we brought more value for them? I identified 4 key areas where we kind of brought our expertise into this and helped them accelerate. One of them is talent. So we provided engineers with great experience in developing financial solutions, and we easily set an agile team ready to start, fully formed and performing. And if we talk about speed, together we enabled a shorter time to market, allowing them to work in parallel to power their expansion into Europe, Asia, and the US at the same time. Of course, one of the major focuses for us is quality, and that's why having a quality mindset and a way of working is reflected into our delivery. And one of the surprising aspects was that even on the side of operations, we managed to share some of our experience. Since we are an 800 plus engineers organization, we kind of supported them in improving their processes, especially for remote work, because they were onboarding engineers from our side. And that happened throughout 2019. And it put in place processes for them that enabled them in 2020 to easily shift to remote work themselves. So at the moment, our engineers, which is about a team of 10 engineers together with theirs, we mostly work remotely from home. So it's not even like 2 separate teams. It's one big team at the moment. And of course, all of these made sense for them because we provided an attractive cost value compared to their local market. Now, speaking about Fortech, I want to share some insights at a glance. We are a company that's been 16 plus years on the market already. I've mentioned that we have about 800 plus engineers on board. We develop from 4 delivery centers in Romania, and we have 1 consultancy and sales office in Chicago. From our experience of about 220 clients, I would say that more than 30 of them have started and are already engaged in long-term partnerships with more than 3 years. Business-wise, the US and Western Europe are part of, I would say, 99% of our business, split 60-40. And as our core services, we're able to provide services ranging from anywhere from business analysis, UX, UI design, development, testing, operations, and support. So kind of end-to-end product development depending on our clients' needs. If I go back to my example, for them here, we're doing software development, maybe some automation testing, DevOps, and we integrate and get roles from their team depending on their needs. That's about it. Thanks so much. I'm happy to get in touch with you. Me and my colleague Alexandra are part of the growth team here at Fortech, focused on financial software development, and looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Andre. If you can please stay on for the Q&A, that would be great.
Definitely.
In the meantime, I would like to ask the attendees to go to menti.com and fill out the feedback for Andre. I see the audience today is still a little bit shy when it comes to the questions, but I do have a question for you in the meantime. Recently, you announced a partnership with Ross Republic, who are also a member of Holland FinTech. Could you maybe share a little bit, how did that go and what are you going to achieve together?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I seem to be having a bit of an echo. So recently we've been partnering up with Ross Republic. I think it's a couple of months now in work, because we complement our services really well. They do consulting in the area of financial institutions and banking as well. And we do financial software development with a focus on financial services. And our value proposition together is workshops for digitalization and accelerated delivery, whereas they bring the part of consulting and we bring the part of accelerated development. And together we offer a great, an all-in-one package for some of our clients. And happy to distribute that through the Holland FinTech network. I think they're a part of your network as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it's always nice to see for us, but thanks for the explanation. Still no other questions. Maybe one more from my side then. This is more of a main question. What are one of the main challenges you experience when onboarding a new client?
Well, for us, on one of my slides, I had let's say a short quote that every client is special, every client is unique, and what we've learned throughout the years is that it's up to us to adapt to their needs. So whether they have already processes in place that we have to plug into, or they have a, let's say, a greenfield operation where we are asked to bring some structure, and we can do that as well, whether we have to do some agile coaching with them, whether we have to go through some strict and rigorous waterfall processes. We've kind of adapted along the way for every process. So a challenge for us, I would say, is to understand the client's organization and the client's way of working in order for us to adapt and plug into exactly what they need. And of course, many times that means working together and doing workshops beforehand, before starting operations, so that we know on both sides what's to expect from such a collaboration.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just make sure everyone's aligned and working towards the same goal and not in opposite directions.
Definitely.
All right, Andre, thanks a lot for your presentation today.
Sure. And, thank you, Michael.
It was nice to have you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's move on to the pitch number 4 of the September meetup of Holland FinTech. In the meantime, of course, don't forget to give your rating for the pitch of Fortech, and also give a little bit of feedback in the follow-up question on menti.com. And then it's time to move on to the 4th pitch. 4th pitch is going to be by EFI Limited. They enable clients to deliver on complex regulatory obligations efficiently and effectively. Today, the presenter is going to be Rob Windle. He's the propositions director of EFI Limited, and Rob is already here on the stage, on the digital stage. So that's great. Rob, I hope you're ready to go. I'll switch my camera off, and good luck.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. My name is Rob Windle, and I'm from Efficient Frontiers International. There have been some brilliant presentations so far, and I'm last, so I'll try and be brief. First, just a quick introduction to the company. When you have issues with client risk operations, we can provide you with support. This includes with KYC onboarding and remediation, transaction monitoring, suspicious activity reporting, and regulatory reporting, including FATCA, CRS, and W-Series forms. We have over 200 experienced analysts and a team of subject matter experts and a fantastic technology team. Our clients range from one of the largest banks in the Netherlands to all sizes of fintechs, including 3 of the largest digital banks in the UK and a plethora of other financial institutions like Share. Today, I want to a piece of technology that we have built to support one of our clients, the EFI W-Series tool. W-Series forms, which for those of you who are not familiar with them, are US tax forms that must be completed by a customer, together with providing any supporting documentation if a customer allows them to trade in US assets. The existing process for completing the form creates a significant operational burden for the client, added to which the forms are complex and often completed with errors that need to be addressed, so not great for the customer. The old process was as follows. The old process was as follows. The customer would download the form, complete the form in paper version. The form would then be submitted to the financial institution, so it needs to be posted to them. The form is then validated by the organisation. Any errors found within the form, the customer would then be requested to provide a new form, so they need to recomplete it. The customer then recompletes the form and submits it back to the financial institution. The form is then validated again, and this is all a manual process by the organisation. It's not done electronically. Once the form is passed, that's then input into the system. So there's opportunity for errors there, and it's also a manual and inefficient system. Once the form has been completed, then finally it's submitted to the systems, and the client can invest in US assets. The W Series tool is a new, simple but effective way to capture your customer's tax information. The tool enables the guided online completion of forms, including appropriate hints and tips for every field to assist the customer. Our industry experts have designed the tool for straightforward and efficient completion. The tool validates the data that's input against the rule sets that our experts have constructed, ensuring compliance with the requirements. The tool improves the process for both customers and the operations users that process the forms for the financial institution. Currently, our client uses the tool for their operations teams to input the data for the paper forms they receive, therefore automatically validating the forms for them. However, they will shortly be launching the customer-facing version, allowing the client to follow the following process. The customer will complete the form online. The data is input and validated automatically by the tool. The fully completed form is submitted to our client, and data passes through their verification. If there are any issues with the data that has been supplied by the client, then those form exceptions, and those can be managed automatically by the operations team and within the system. Once the form is approved, then the status is updated automatically in the client system, and any data is passed across to their books and records system. So I think you'll agree it's a lot more efficient a system. We built this tool because we saw an opportunity to significantly improve the quality and efficiency of the customer journey for our clients that require W Series forms. However, it took a combination of both ongoing tax expertise and technology to be able to deliver this. Here's a sneak peek of one of the screens from the tool, but I have included a link in the expo section of the webinar to a demo video that provides a 2-minute walkthrough of the tool for those of you that would like to see it in action. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions now, Michael.
Thanks very much, Rob. Thank you for the very clear presentation. Please just stay on the stage for the Q&A. In the meantime, of course, I want to ask everyone to fill out the feedback for the presentation. And also, if you have questions, ask them in the chat. Sometimes I think that you forget the chat option is there, but it still is there. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead. Rob, I do have a question for you already. You mentioned in the beginning that you're working together with some digital banks in the UK. Are there any names you could mention? Which banks these are?
I don't think we can mention the names. We tend to work in quite heavily regulated areas and with financial crime. So we make a habit, unfortunately, of not mentioning any of our clients. But you would recognise the 3 banks that I'm talking about. There's not a huge number to choose that are of that size. All right,
very clear answer. Thanks. And basically, the next question that pops into my mind is, a lot has happened in the last few years when it comes to the regulatory landscape. A lot of changes, a lot of uncertainty as well. It must be difficult for you guys to kind of navigate that and be in between the banks that need to be regulated and the people that are coming up with the regulations.
Yeah, we've got a great team that work with us, our regulatory experts and SMEs, and they work closely with our training teams who feeds that information down to both our clients, but also the analysts that we have. We have about 200 analysts that work on processing files for us, or processing cases for the banks. So it really is about doing that heavy lifting.
Yeah. And does it also sometimes go the other direction? So feedback comes in from basically the banks, and you work it back up to the regulators, and so we can kind of create a dynamic like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We get involved in quite a lot of the consultations. Right. We tend to bring the feedback from our clients and the wider industry, and put that together in consultation responses, with a view to trying to influence the regulations that are coming up and make sure that they're more efficient for the banks.
All right. Oh, that's great to hear. It's nice that you can also have influence on the other side. All right. Oh wait, I can see there is a message in the chat box. Yes, there is. The question by Jeroen Wijkamp, and his question is as follows: I suppose you address for your clients common and less common questions by the IRS? Question mark.
It's the tool is designed to guide the completion of the W series forms. So that's the W9 and W8Ben forms. So it's really about accurately completing those forms rather than broad or broader tax advice. It's about ensuring that those forms are correctly completed. So it doesn't touch on wider questions, just whether the information that's put into the form is valid. And also these forms are horrendously complex, and there's several sections where if you're an organization, then you should drop 3 sections, and if you have a UBO, then you should be filling in 2 of the other sections, and so on. This makes it complicated for people to complete them, and the guided process that the tool uses captures all of the information that's required, and then if additional information is required, then it just automatically generates those fields, and then produces the PDF at the end for the client, but also takes all of that information and passes that on to the client system.
Okay, that sounds like you're taking a lot of hard work and labor out of their hands.
It's a very manual process to validate these forms, and also to transfer the information from a paper form into a system. Yeah. And there's always going to be some errors there and inefficiencies. And if you want to invest in US assets, you go online and you're not registered with the organisation, then you need to complete. You need to download, complete the form, post it to them, wait for them to validate it and process it. Wait for them to update it in their system and mark on their system that the form is valid, and then allow you to invest in US assets. Whereas with our system, the client can complete the form online. If all the validation is correct and it matches with the system, the data that they've got in their books and records system, then they can be trading within no time at all. Minutes.
All right, that's a big difference. That sounds like a big difference. All right, Rob, that was it for now. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thank you.
We're going to go on. Well, I hope you all gave you a rating for the best pitch. So then it is time to announce who has won, who has got the highest rating as rated by the audience today. So if you can go to the next slide. Of course, leave a little bit of feedback for Holland FinTech. We also give the opportunity for you to leave your email address so we can send the presentations to you today, and you can browse through them at your own speed. Now, the best pitch, the winner of the best pitch of today, the Holland FinTech September Meetup, is Ace Company. Congratulations, Nick. Congratulations, Arthur. If you'd like, you can briefly request to come on stage again and say a few thank you words. I'll give you a few seconds to jump on that opportunity if that's something you'd like to do.
Congratulations,
Nick.
Michael, so just a couple of words, very unexpected. It was a real pleasure. Like I said, I wish we'd had a couple of hours. We probably could have talked for a few more. Yeah. But it was really great, and we really look forward to continuing to be part of this this network. A really fun session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for that. And we'll send something nice your way in the next week.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was it for the best pitch of today. We have a few more slides just to wrap up with some valuable information for you. So if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. If you want to stay up to date on what we're doing and what our very dynamic network is doing on our activities, then you have different opportunities to keep track of that. I would definitely recommend the newsletters, because you will not only stay up to date on everything that's happening in fintech globally, but you will also stay up to date on what's happening within the network and where you could possibly join. Next slide, please. For all the companies that are members of Holland FinTech, of the Holland FinTech ecosystem, and have not yet filled out their profile for the European FinTech Navigator digital version, please do so by going to our website. On our homepage, there's a bar for the European FinTech Navigator where you can fill in your information. For those of you who want to know what the European FinTech Navigator is, you can also go to our website, and if you'd like to get involved in that, feel free to reach out to any one of us at Holland FinTech. Okay, next slide, please. So I just want to say one final thing about Amsterdam FinTech Week. It's going to be a week filled with events from our member community. It's starting already next Friday. It's kicking off next Friday, and it's a one-week event, so it starts on Friday the 18th, I think it is, until the end of Friday the 25th, with nice events every day. If you want to know what's going on, if you want to get involved, go to xfw.amsterdam. That's the website, xfw.amsterdam, and you can find all the information you're looking for over there. And I think the last thing to say is we will stay online for, I would say, 10-15 minutes after this meetup. So if you want to talk to any one of us, if you want to talk to anyone else who is attending, you can do so by going to the networking section or requesting a call through the chat option. So I'm very happy to talk to you, so are my colleagues, so feel free to reach out to us. Maybe a good idea if my colleagues can state their names and that they're part of Holland FinTech in the chat box to make it easier for you guys. And then that's it from my side. So I would like to thank you all for joining today. I hope to see many of you during Amsterdam FinTech Week, and if you can't make it, then the next meetup in